Why don't we start off with just yourself? So, what's your story before dotCMS? Where were you? What were you doing? And even before that, how did you get into the CMS world?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, I really started my CMS career at Hippo CMS, now Bloomreach, in late 2009. Prior to that, I worked in different industries, consulting at Accenture, telecoms at WorldCom, the Dutch Postal Services, and also a direct marketing agency. And actually, that agency opened my eyes because it really made me want to work in the digital marketing space and for a software vendor. So that definitely triggered my interest. And then, I basically ran into Hippo. I mean, they had a vacancy. It was a 7-minute bike ride from my house in downtown Amsterdam.
Yeah.
A great team getting ready to scale the business. And so we did. You know how that tenure went,
Yes.
which I still cherish every minute of it. And just like I do with the dotCMS, I mean, big stuff is about to happen here.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that for sure. I think that's where you and me first met, right? Like it was a Hippo event way back when we first met there.
Yep.
I can't remember the exact date of that. I think it was 2014 or 2015. So
that was in Boston, I guess.
No, this was in Amsterdam. It was Amsterdam.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I just can't remember what year it was, but it was a while back. But I kind of giggled when you said it was a 7-minute bike ride from your house because that's so Amsterdam, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, you mentioned dotCMS. So, you had your stint with Hippo. What attracted you to dotCMS? Initially at least.
Well, what I was super surprised by the high quality of the product. I mean, obviously we were competing against each other, but I was really excited about the maturity of the product and the potential, obviously, right? So that was definitely attraction number one. But also the team was a great team in place. It was a smaller company. Obviously, I came off Bloomreach. Hippo was just acquired a year prior, and it was already a bigger organization. And dotCMS was a small, vendor, which brought me back instantly to the Hippo days when I joined there.
Yeah.
So that was really attractive for me.
Fair enough. And 2021 was a big year for dotCMS, right? So you had the 20% reported growth in revenue, and we had you had the growth investment in October. So those are the two highlights, I imagine. What drove that? So firstly, the growth in revenue, was that off of the back of some of the benefits of COVID? Dare I say benefits of COVID? Was that sort of the back of that? Was there other things driving that?
I would say a little bit of everything, right? I mean, I think the industry we're operating in is booming and growing year over year. And that's also not going to change anytime soon. And I think the pandemic might have played a role in accelerating digital transformation projects. But at the same time, I've also seen projects that have been put on hold also due to COVID. So I've seen both. But like I said, digital marketing is here to stay, as you know, and it's a great industry. And I think every vendor in this industry should have seen double-digit growth numbers in the last 2 years, in my opinion, because we haven't really made any changes to, let's say, our go-to-market strategy or our messaging, or made tremendous changes to our product. I mean, again, we were still operating on a shoestring budget and limited resources. So, we were just working with what we had, and we articulated our product vision in 2018. And that was resonating still really well, right? So it translated into growth, both new logo sales as well as some huge upsells on our existing customer base. So all in all, it was a great year.
Yeah, and I'll come back to the whole the roadmap and the strategy and your go-to-market strategy that you did sort of formulate in 2018, because I felt like dotCMS was one of the first vendors on my radar, at least, that took a marketer-friendly approach in headless space early on, right? So we saw after the pandemic hit, I mean, again, I'm not saying it's as a result of the pandemic, but I'm using it as a time frame. Other vendors were starting to, really pivot into, okay, we need the no-code, low-code tools. Marketers are becoming a large part of the buying process, and we need to sort of, appeal to them both from a feature perspective and a marketing perspective and a branding perspective. And I felt like dotCMS was, I think probably the fact that you didn't have to change too much was because it felt like to me you had a good strategy to begin with, right? You were quite one of the early movers on that.
Correct. No, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I mean, we articulated our current product vision back in 2018, and one of the pillars were basically around no code, cloud, hybrid, and user experience. Yeah. And I think we stayed true to those pillars as we move forward, was because what we've seen in the market in the last 2 years is that those themes resonate really well. I mean, yes. We're going to talk about Mac and what have you, but it all goes back to these pillars as well in my experience.
Yeah, for sure. And just going back to to 2021 sort of growth period, dotCMS also announced growth investment. That was how it was referred to. There was no numbers, so you don't have to give me anything you shouldn't give me. But what's the story there? What happened there? Why was it the right time?
Sure. No, I mean, software companies talk to investors all the time, right? Yeah. I mean, we've turned down a couple of proposals, but I think this was the right time. And basically, we've been acquired by a search fund, Appleby, led by Zain Ishak and Vadim Kononenko. And basically, what they did is they raised the capital to buy dotCMS, and now they run with the two co-founders, Will, Jason, and myself, the business, right? Mm-hmm. So we basically have 19 investors, including Will and Jason, and also a little bit myself, to basically scale the business and take the company to the next level.
Cool, that's great.
And that's really it. And then Zain took on the role as CEO. Vadim, the role as president, and so far it's working really well. I'm super excited about this. It will give us the foundation from many perspectives, but most importantly from a capital perspective to take the company to where we want it to take. Right. And again, basically where we want to be is in the next 4 to 5 years. Triple, quadruple our current revenue. So that's kind of the play and the playbook that I've seen, obviously, at Hippo. So I couldn't be more excited about where we are right now and where we will be in the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome, man. And going, flip-flopping back to the market-friendly tools, right? I think this is like a big trend we're seeing across the space where, like I mentioned, a lot of vendors after the pandemic, they started to pivot into this. It seems like to me dotCMS kind of had a head start on that. And if I'm not mistaken, you're trying now to sort of brand your existing tools, the evolution of the original tools you had for marketers, the no-code stuff, originally called Edit Mode Anywhere. And now it's sort of evolving into a visual experience manager. So what's happening there? What's new with that? What's planned with that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Yeah, no, so, I mean, we still call it Edit Mode Anywhere, but to your point, back in 2019, because that's when we started thinking about it, we felt that in the pure headless play, the user experience for a content editor has to be identical as with the traditional use of any CMS, right, and including dotCMS. And what I mean by that is that we wanted to have undisrupted access to tools like drag and drop, preview, inline editing, and personalization, regardless of where and how the content is being presented, right? So just a form-based UI without these tools is underwhelming, to put it mildly, right? And so that's where we started to, basically come up with that concept. So, okay, how can we bridge that and make sure that a content contributor, a marketer, or any non-technical user who's working with our product can have that seamless user experience? And from a content editor perspective, the notion of headless is irrelevant to us, right? I mean, we're a hybrid CMS. We offer maximum flexibility to development teams as well as marketers, where they maintain a high level of no-code and user experience, right? So everybody happy. But what you will see is that we'll continue to double down on that from not only a user experience perspective, but also a developer perspective, right? I mean, as you know, there's new frameworks almost every day, right? And so we want to make our product easy to work with also from a developer perspective, right? So if you want to work with a certain framework, then it has to be like, a seamless developer experience to work with dotCMS, that particular framework, and our visual experience manager, right?
Yeah.
And there's definitely still some steps that we can make there, like developing framework-specific SDKs. I mean, we obviously support all the popular flavors like React, Angular, and Vue, and what have you, but we can definitely make some improvements there to make it even easier to work with our software.
Okay, fair enough. And I kind of want to dig into, you as a sales is your forte, right? So I want to dig into sort of the sales stuff. And it's not very often I get to speak to salespeople actually in depth, even though I should do a lot more of that. But I'm always curious about, what's driving trends. Is the market driving trends, or do the trends drive the market? Those are interesting questions to me. So, first question is, what are you seeing recently, right? So this last maybe 6 to 8 months, we've seen a lot of Mac stuff, we've seen a lot of composable stuff from Gartner. Is that being reflected? Was that before Gartner started talking about that? Were you seeing that in calls, or was it after Gartner started?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? So there's a couple of things I want to say about that. First of all, and oddly enough, I still see a ton of requirements that haven't really changed for the last 12 years. And also don't forget that analysts and vendors tend to sell the dream to a market that isn't ready yet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we love to drink our own Kool-Aid, and aside from some early adopters, of course, but I still see a lot of standard and straightforward requirements that I feel like, wow, this was no different than 12 years ago. But of course, you see the trends like composable and Mac and Jamstack. It's usually not articulated. That's verbatim.
Yeah.
But you can obviously see it through the requirements like maximum flexibility, developer independence, and stuff like that. And I've always seen a proper representation in CMS selection processes. There's always business people involved. They don't talk about headless or composable. They only care about ease of use, speed, and independence from IT. And so that's where the no-code paradigm is definitely trending. I definitely see that coming back over and over again, and actually people calling it out. We just want no-code. Lower developer dependency, and just want to see cool stuff. And from a developer perspective, it's a little different. I mean, they still build integrations between the CMS and the adjacent digital marketing stack, but with microservices and APIs and the tooling around those APIs and microservices, it has become super easy, and you can build those integrations in a heartbeat, right? So Mac, in my opinion, which I love and embrace, the principles, don't get me wrong, and maybe we should become a member or what have you. We should give Sonia a call maybe. But it hasn't brought anything new, in my opinion. I think what it did is, and we have a tendency in our industry to, it's the old wine in a new bag, right? It sounds a little bit like that. I mean, you've been in the industry for some time now, and when we had this ongoing debate about it's the suites versus the best of breed CMSs.
Yeah,
and I feel that Mac is really supporting a best of breed approach to digital marketing, and I also feel that it's here to stay. I mean, and again, in the Mac Alliance, they talk about the monolith, the suites, and it's not that black and white. I must say. I mean, you even see the traditional suites like Adobe Acquia in Sidecore, also branching out to Mac principles and make it easier to build interoperability between their solution and the rest of the ecosystem. So it's a little bit of everything, But again, going back to your point, I think no-code, Mac are certainly trends that you see reflected in sales cycles. Absolutely.
Yeah. How about just maybe not a 12-year trend, but I'm interested in the last 5 years, since 2016 onwards, maybe. Have you felt like around 5 years ago, selling a headless CMS, or just let's just say selling dotCMS, was far more of a technical endeavor, and nowadays it's become a bit more of a hybrid between technical, marketing, business, or is that not the case? It's still very much a technical sale.
It's still a very technical sale, right? I mean, there's no way about it because, like I said, in every evaluation there's representation from business as well as IT, and IT is always they go deep, in no time. So there's no way to get around a technical conversation, which is great. But what you definitely see, it has shifted from deep, hardcore Java, in our case, development questions, to more like web development. I mean, I think if there was a big shift, is that from hardcore technologies like Java, .NET, and what have you, more towards like no-code and low-code web development requirements. I think that's the biggest shift that I've seen in our industry.
Okay.
So then it becomes less relevant if you're a Java shop or a .NET solution, right? So that's definitely a big change, which I support because it's much easier to get web developers than to get like a hardcore Java developer. We still cater to that audience, because obviously you can extend our platform with custom plugins, and that's actually the only area where you would need a Java developer. But other than that, it's just common sense and standard web developer skills, which are pretty generic.
Fair enough. So you mentioned a few of the sort of legacy, or should we say monolith? Let's say monolith vendors there, right? Drupal, Sitecore, Adobe. From what I can see, and I won't name a specific name, but from what I can see, their strategy seems to be, again, with the whole Mac thing, how can I explain it? They're sort of tearing down their own monoliths and rebuilding it as a best of breed solution. It seems that's what it seems to be. That's what the strategy seems to be. Do you agree with that? Is that the right way for them to go? Do you think are they a bit too far away from where they should be already for it to work long term? What do you think?
Well, I mean, they play in the top segment of the industry, right? So they have deep pockets.
Yeah.
So if any vendor could afford to basically replatform themselves, it's those players.
True.
Right. So it's definitely no surprise that a player like Sitecore comes out with like a cloud native product. It was long overdue, I think, for them. But it's no surprise for me, and because again, I think they want to position themselves as the old new kids from the block, And we've been around, but we're still cool, and I think that's good, because those are the guys that we typically replace. That I see, I usually don't compete against those guys. We're typically replacing them because they're so cumbersome to work with, and
that's right.
An upgrade is almost just as expensive as replatforming. So why bother?
Yeah, and I think,
but we're usually not head to head with these guys.
And that's what I hear from everybody, right? In the sort of the DXP Mac space, that's why I hear the same thing over and over again. We don't really compete with them. The people who come to us, they've already decided that they want to get away from those players, and now they're seeking something new. And, obviously that's happening enough for, some of those players to start, replatforming themselves, or especially branding themselves differently, right? Again, no names, but if you Google Mac architecture, it'll be a surprising name at the very top of that list or top of Google, and it begs questions. But it's very interesting to me because as you mentioned,
absolutely,
they're the top sort of echelons of the enterprise. They're dealing with those big enterprise players, and if you look at the market as a whole, they've got probably upwards of 98% of the market in terms of compared to Mac players, DXP, headless CMS players, and yet they're taking a big taking a big gamble. They're taking a big, they're making a big shift, investing lots of money to adopt the way of that 2%. So I think it says a lot about where the market is heading, and where they admit through action where the market is heading. It's an interesting one.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, their pond is super limited. Right? There's only so many Fortune 5,000 companies that can actually afford their subscriptions, right? So it does make sense to go downstream, which is an interesting strategy. I mean, SAP tried to do this 20 years ago and failed completely because they wanted to go mid-market as well. So it's a similar strategy, but hey, it could work. I mean, if any one could do it, it's those guys. I mean, they have the deep pockets, they have the market penetration, the whole apparatus to build product and support it. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting. At least.
God bless them.
The next couple of years will be very interesting for sure, in terms of what happens on that front. But back to dotCMS. I want to talk about over a lot since you've joined. What's been, and I like to ask this to headless CMS vendors because not enough. I don't hear enough about the innovative stuff, the interesting stuff. Weirdly, I think there's less interesting, innovative stuff happening in general. To be honest with you. Maybe somebody from the outside looking in would think, oh wow, headless, API first, the possibilities are almost endless. But generally speaking, I'm sure you'd agree. Most companies are just trying to get the basics right still. Interestingly enough.
Exactly.
That said, what's been the most interesting or innovative case study you've seen so far?
Yeah, actually, it's a most recent customer in the manufacturing industry who's actually doing a really cool project where they want to expose data collected by their IoT devices and expose that to their end users through an Angular app.
Okay.
That has been the most advanced, innovative project that I've seen in the last 2 years. I mean, other than that, it's just, the usual, we're building an app, a website, an intranet, which is all cool, don't get me wrong, because those are all, touch points in the digital marketing mix and what have you. But this is by far, the most exciting one that I've seen, at least in the last 2 years. And I expect to see more stuff like that, with, 5G, IoT. Makes it a lot easier to collect, aggregate, and expose data to end users. There's definitely a role for blockchain and AI still, although I still feel that's in its infancy. But you will see that coming down the pike for sure. I mean, you already see it in with the DXP players, right? With search and merchandising. It's there already. But again, in the core content management process, there's definitely a play for those technologies as well, and I expect to see that in the next 2 years.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because again, 4 or 5 years ago, when this whole headless thing was coming about, my initial reaction, and it seemed like the industry was like, this is going to open up a whole new way of us to, and it did. It opened up a whole new way for brands to interact with their customers. We're thinking voice, we're talking, I don't know, some sort of, AR and VR becoming much more mainstream because of this technology. And it hasn't happened, but I think what has happened is, the basics have just become much, much better, right? So like you mentioned, things like search,
Absolutely.
things like personalization, that kind of stuff. So it feels like, we've just spent the last 5 years, or most brands spent the last 5 years just getting the basics really, really, really right. And I don't know when we're going to sort of make that step to, and again, I suppose Meta and the whole metaverse thing will be the catalyst. But I mean, it's good to have the technology in place that's capable of, supporting that kind of thing, right?
I agree. No, I agree. I couldn't agree more on what you just said. Haven't seen, super exciting or demands that could not be fulfilled with technology that was already there. I think everybody's improving their foundation here and there, and basically, make it easier to work with, easier to implement, time to value, time to market, reducing total cost of ownership and return on investment. The standard plays definitely apply, and but I will say that we're selling to people, obviously, end users, and people have access to all these cool apps that they use in their personal life, and they just expect the same experience with the tools that they use in their job, which is not always the case, and that's what we're competing against. And I usually say, they want the WordPress experience, but then the robustness of an enterprise CMS like dotCMS. And if you look at what we've done, I saw some data a couple of days ago, and actually those were the two areas where we spend the most effort in terms of new and improvement, and that was UI, UX, and API, which
and I think
no surprise.
Yeah, it is no surprise, and again, that's something else. It kind of goes hand in hand with the whole no-code tools needed for marketers. The UI UX has to also evolve just as well for the reasons you just mentioned. And again, that's been the trend from typically developer-focused or developer-only tools, headless CMSs in the market. Over the last 2 years, I've seen them again invest heavily in UI UX. And that's part and parcel of, I think, just saying, okay, we've got the developer stuff down. Now let's get the marketers back to where they were previously. As an industry, we're almost there. And, before I throw the entire industry under the bus in terms of nothing's really changed or nothing's improved, if you go and look back at a lot of company websites in 2013, 2012, compared to today, the user experience of it, the personalization elements, and the people actually working to produce content on those websites, there is, of course, been a massive improvement. But in terms of
absolutely. And there's still a lot to do. Don't get me wrong. I mean, even if I look into our own product, we want to double down on analytics ourselves. I mean, we call it out in our fall update. There's a lot of groundwork to be done there. I'm building an analytics foundation, and obviously the foundation for tons of digital marketing tooling. But also, and this is particularly because of COVID in this hybrid distributed world, I think collaboration in a tool like a content management system is becoming even more so usually important, from the very early on ideation phase all the way to the actual production of design and content, I think has to happen inside the platform. So that's definitely an interesting area where a lot of tools can improve, in my opinion.
I agree. That whole, Google Docs-esque collaboration is going to be the next thing, I think. Yeah.
But then better. I'm not a huge fan of. I love Google Suite. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but from a user experience, I think we can do better as an industry.
I look forward to that. I look forward to seeing that. Excellent. Okay, Stefan, one more question to wrap this up.
Sure.
What's one thing you would change about the headless CMS space if you could?
Yeah. You know what? Headless.
Oh, wow.
Skip it. It's irrelevant, I think. And I say this because I actually mean it. I think the headless players, the pure headless players that entered the market a couple of years ago, particularly guys like Contentful, Content Stack, but also Storyblock and the likes, had a role. And the role that they had, in my opinion, was to disrupt the industry, which they did. They made it easier to implement the CMS and start building pages and websites. But what doesn't add up to me is that if I'm a marketer and I just need a short-lived landing page that maybe lives a week or 2 weeks, it doesn't add up to me that I need to engage a developer to build that page for me versus having a page builder that can do it for me in 5 minutes. And so I'm a strong believer in hybrid. I believe in both at the same time, and I think that's the steady state of CMS, in my opinion. And I say this because I already see the the pure headless players building delivery tiers and page builders. Why do you think Commerce Tools acquired Frontastic?
Yeah. So it's
right?
Yeah.
I mean, so and again, I mean, I think it's here to stay. So I think the whole notion of where content is being rendered becomes less relevant. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think the whole market will pivot towards that steady state. It's like, hey, we don't care. We don't care where you want to expose content and present it on a VR screen or an Apple Watch or what have you. It is less and less relevant, and we'll just manage it. And on the same side, the editors have that seamless experience where they can preview, inline edit, and drag and drop, etc. I think that will be the steady state for CMS.
Yeah, fair enough.
So headless, get rid of headless.
Get rid of headless and go to hybrid. That's your message, right? And I think that's becoming the industry message again. Like I mentioned before, the pure headless guys have noticed that, and they're making their steps towards a hybrid solution. So yeah, I think we're going there. We're going there for sure. Okay, Stefan, this is great. Thank you so much for joining me. Some interesting stuff.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Absolutely.
Where can people find out more about you and dotCMS?
dotCMS.com.
Just there, yeah. No self-promotion today.
No, not really.
Okay.
No. Cool. Yeah, they can go to LinkedIn, Stefan Schinkel, but
cool.
It's not about me. It's about our product and our team. So
cool. Okay. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks a lot.